Everything's for you anyway.
Yeah, all good time, mate. Yeah, sound.
Yeah, you went back to the old buzz cut in the coronavirus lockdown.
Yeah, yeah. I had to. My lad wanted one doing, and he was sort of umming and ahhing, so decided to take one for the team.
How's things going in lockdown anyway? You keep yourself busy.
All right, yeah. Do you know what? I've got to be honest. I've enjoyed it. It's been nice to sort of have a bit of downtime and spend some time with the kids again. Where my kids are teenagers now, so they don't really want to do anything with their dad. So it's been nice to just have a bit of time with them again and recharge the batteries a little bit. Really, I'm one of them weird people who's sort of enjoys his own company. I can just be on my own for hours, so it's not been too bad.
A bit of an introvert.
Yeah, yeah. I was laughing I was messaging Macklin the other day, and he's even worse than me. He loves spending time on his own, so he's
Yeah.
probably enjoying it here. So he's sound, yeah, yeah.
I always listen to his podcast. He said that. He said, "This isn't loneliness to me." He says, "Camp's loneliness. This isn't loneliness."
Yeah, exactly. It's like his ideal situation, I think.
The last time I saw you, well, actually, the first time I saw you in person, it was actually when Stephen Ward was fighting Liam Conroy. And
Oh yeah,
I remember you saying before the fight, actually, Tyrone McKenna was fighting Dara Foley that night as well.
yeah,
But I remember you said to Stephen, you were like, I just feel like I feel like in the air there's going to be a war, like. And Stephen was
yeah.
like, I just really hope that isn't me, But what a cracking fight that ended up being, huh?
Yeah, it was a great fight. Yeah, I think I cursed him that night. But no, I've had that a few times. Generally, a lot of the times when I used to work at Sky, I'd always say, "Oh, I've got a feeling we're gonna have a barnstormer tonight," and generally it happened. So, and it used to happen all the way through my career as well. So I might have to start throwing them thoughts out of my head when they come in my mind for my fighters.
Mhm. I remember sitting during the fight and I remember the commentary and like Liam was Stephen was up against the ropes and there was blood everywhere with his cut and stuff like that, and it literally sprayed up on some of the commentators and they were kind of like ducking down.
Yeah,
And I remember one of the guys in the media beside me, because I was ringside for it, and he was typing away trying to keep work from the fight before, and I was like, "Mate, you need to put down your laptop for this." I'm telling you, and then he put it down.
yeah, yeah. That was a great fight and typical blood and guts fight, really. I think the cuts or Stephen's cut added to the drama of it and the excitement, but it was one of them fights for me as a coach where you find a lot out about your fighter that night, because as a fighter, until you're in that situation, you don't really know whether you've got the mettle to do stuff like that yourself until you're in the situation. You certainly don't know it as a coach until your guys in that situation, and then you see how they respond. Mm. So it was good to see that Stephen had what the ingredients, what you need to moving forward, because he's obviously got stuff what he still needs to work on in terms of like his defence. We're still working on stuff like that, but it's coming now. It's improving. I'm so happy he's agreed with me now and he's moved up to cruiserweight, because I've always felt like he was a cruiserweight. I've never really felt like he was a light heavyweight. He was always malnourished, really, boxing at that weight. It's only down to his dedication and that he's been able to make the weight. He's so dedicated. So, but I feel like he'll flourish at cruiserweight. He's improving. Offensively, he's always been very good, but he's needed to make improvements defensively, and it's never really been sort of brought to people's attention because he's been fighting at a low level. Mm-hmm. But he got caught cold in his last fight and never recovered against a big puncher. But I never really wanted him to be in that fight anyway. I told him after the Leon Conroy fight, if you ever tell me you're fighting at light heavyweight again, I won't be involved. It was only because the opportunity was too big for him to pass up, and he begged me to let him do it. And then if the worst case scenario happened, then he'd move up. So it probably was the perfect scenario in the way he lost, because if you're struggling at the weight, the last thing you want is a 10-round dogfight, because that can be dangerous, physically. It can affect your health really bad. So for him to get caught cold and not to really take that much punishment, and knowing that if you lost, he was moving straight up, then obviously it's never great to lose. But if you're going to lose in the situation it was, where he was so tight in the weight, then it was probably the perfect way to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I suppose that, like, even though it was great for him to have that experience, to know that he can go to that kind of place if he ever needs to go to the well like that. That at the end of the fight, you still kind of had the feeling like it was great that he did that and all that, but if he has many more of them at light heavyweight, his career might end quite early. But I was actually speaking to his nutritionist the other day, Tony O'Neill, and he said now he's delighted with life now. He's walking around at over 14 stone with a six-pack.
Yeah, he's gone from, and he has to be careful because it's such a big jump to cruiserweight. I think people feel like so it doesn't really make sense when you think about it. Any fighter who moves up a weight start going, yeah, I'm going to build up. I'm going to add a bit of muscle and fill out into the weight. But if you're moving up a weight, you've outgrown the other weight division. Mm-hmm. So you're naturally already on the way to that weight division. So why do you have to eat up and build up into it? You don't. And the only weight really where you might think they do is the light heavy to cruiser. But Stephen's that big, he actually doesn't have to do it. Mm-hmm. So he's gone from being hungry all the time and starving himself to he doesn't even want to eat now because he's that comfortable. But he's walking around at over 15 stone with a six-pack. It's fucking crazy to think that he could ever do 12-7, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and at the same time, it is the biggest jump in boxing weight classes from light heavyweight to cruiserweight. Yeah. It's 25 pounds. I put
a thing on Twitter today. Someone put a post on about the gap in between, and I said I never understood why they moved cruiserweight. If they had a concern, because cruiserweight was already a stone above light heavyweight, if they had a concern about that sort of gap in between cruiser and heavyweight, they should have introduced a super cruiserweight, which could have been, say, 14.5 stone, and then there would have still been a big gap in between. But the bigger you are, a couple of pounds doesn't really make a difference. So it is a tough one, and probably something what maybe the Boxing Board of Control need to look at and decide whether to do something about it.
Yeah, there was some talk I think before that they were going to move cruiserweight down, and then they were going to move heavyweight down so basically move heavyweight to 200 pound, and then have a super heavyweight division. For the guys that are walking around at 260, whatever it was. There was talk of that for a while, but I don't think.
When you think about that scenario, though, the history of the heavyweight division will be for change forever. So that's really not an option. Whereas the cruiserweight division, up until recently, was always 13.8, I think it was. So the only time frame which would be changed would be the recent cruiserweight. If we reverted back to the old cruiserweight and then introduced a new weight division, you're starting afresh, then you're not changing the old heavyweight division. So I think the best scenario, and probably the only sensible way to do it, would be to bring in a super cruiser.
Yeah. No,
I'm getting onto the Boxing Board of Control and telling them. We've come up. We've basically got the answers now. We're just going to tell them what I fucking do.
Yeah. I think Steve would love that as well. Talking about you now a bit more, but you've always been kind of seen as the sensible person in boxing. You always seen sensible. Have you always been like that?
I'm only sensible when I'm talking about boxing, and that's the thing. I'm 90% of the time fucking about. I can't really take life too serious, because because it just gets me down. You know, it's like when I was fighting, even I used to get bollocked all the time off Oliver for pissing about. But boxing's that's such a serious, tough sport that the only way I could enjoy it and not let it get to me too much was to you know, fool around and have the crack. And I think it's helping my fighters. A lot of them, I don't think I'm not telling them to act or to do certain things in any way. Mm-hmm. I'm just allowing them to express themselves in whichever way they feel best sort of suits them. And I have always had this idea in my head, that you'll always get the best out of a fighter, or a fighter will always perform to the best of his attributes if he's enjoying himself. If you're in a good place mentally, then that transfers into whatever you do in every other aspect of your life. Mm. So, and including boxing. So if you're happy and content, you're always going to be more happy doing something which is difficult, which is obviously the dieting, the training, and stuff like that. So, and it takes your mind off it. So yeah, I'm sensible in the sense that I take my job seriously, but in terms of everyday life, I just piss about all the time.
So you're a Salford man, and I can see anyway in the background you've got the United badge behind you, but you do have Irish roots though as well, don't you?
Yeah. So
I know you fought for the Irish title, like.
Yeah. My mum's side of the family are Irish, so they're all from Kilkenny. So yeah. So big
party town.
Hurling town, yeah. So yeah. So I visited a couple of times when I was a kid. My mum took us over there to see the family and stuff, and they come over and watch us fight. When I was boxing, when I was involved in British title fights, they came up to Dublin when I fought in Tala for the Irish title, and yeah, came over for they came over for my European title fights as well. So it was nice. It was nice. I always wanted the chance to fight for the Irish title, and I actually thought that the way my career had developed, I thought I'd missed the boat with it really.
Yeah.
And what happened was, a promoter who got a TV deal with TV3 was looking for someone to top the bill.
Tommy Egan.
Yeah, Tommy Egan, yeah. He was looking for someone to top the bill who wasn't contracted to anyone else, or who would be able to do it, who had a bit of a name for himself. And he just contacted me out of the blue and said, would you be interested in fighting for the Irish title? And it was weird, really. It was a bit of fate because I just had surgery on my shoulder. So I was looking to maybe have a tune-up fight before the box for the European title. So it worked perfectly. And plus, it was near enough 3 years to the day that me nana, my mum's mum, who was the Irish side of the family, had passed away. So it was a nice little sort of tribute to her as well, and my Irish roots, that it fell on that day that I got to fight for it.
Mm. And there's quite a few big Irish names on it as well. Actually, general names. It was Paul and Patrick Hyland. So Patrick obviously went on and fought for 2 world titles, and then you had Kiko Martinez, Gary Spike O'Sullivan as well. So there's a good few big names on it.
It was a decent card. It was just a shame that there was hardly anyone in there. You know, I think the basketball arena held about 2,500 people, and there was about 1,000 people there. So and I brought about probably about 60, 70 people over from Salford. So, so they made enough noise in there. They made enough noises around in the boozes around Tala. But a few of them got told to be on the way and fucked off out of the pubs because it's some place at Tala, eh?
Yeah, California as they call it.
Yeah.
You obviously growing up in Salford and Manchester, fighting as an amateur. You as a pro, you became known for your body punching, but that was from a spar, wasn't it? That you turned into that with Ricky Hatton as an amateur.
It was a fight. It was an actual fight. He battered me.
Fight. Sorry.
Yeah. So it was my 9th fight. I was relative novice, so I only had 9. I'd had 8 fights. I was in the. I got drew in the championships against Ricky, and the only reason was because he'd been out injured, And when he came back and weighed in for the championships, he was the weight above. So I'd never heard of him. And my amateur coach said he was pulling me out of the fight. He said, he's this kid, Richard Hatton, he's a really good fighter. And I don't want you to get hurt. And I was like, are you fucking mad? So he pointed him out to me. He said, there he is, there. And he had like a flat top. And I was like, I'm fucking fighting him. I said, you ain't not pulling me out against him, I'll fight him. So he said, we had a bit of a debate about it, and he said, right, listen, if you're getting hurt, I'll pull you out. And I remember thinking, is he fucking mad? Yeah. You know, I couldn't get my head around it. But really, when you think, like, I only had 8 fights, there was never really proper technique involved or any, you know, proper sort of boxing skill. It was just a bit of a scrap, really. And he came out, he's moving his head, he had a bit of a rhythm, and he started hitting me downstairs, and I was like, I'd never been hit with a body shot. I was like, what the fuck is that? I'm going to start using them myself. Hey, so yeah, it was an eye-opener.
Yeah. But you knew after that fight, didn't you? You knew he was going to be special, didn't you? I think you said that, and he was quite.
Yeah, well, everyone was talking. So obviously that was my first introduction to him. But I obviously kept my eye out for him then. And another one of my teammates went on in the championships, and he was telling me how good he was. So we always followed him from that point on. And me and him stayed friends, and we've been good mates ever since that point. I think I was 15 at the time. And so you always knew he was very mature then, Ricky, as well. He was sort of physically strong. He was nearly basically a man then. So you had a feeling that he'd probably turn pro early. And Ricky's got, or a lot of people have got Ricky to thank for setting the path for everyone from this area in the Northwest, really, to believe in themselves, because everyone loved Ricky because he's so relatable. So he's your typical everyday person. You can, you know, imagine yourself going down the pub having a pint with him. So he'd give every single fighter from around this region the belief, once he started having that success, you believe that you can have it then, because you sort of start to think to yourself, well, why not? He's only a normal everyday kid like us, yet he's training hard, he's working hard, he's doing the right things, and he's getting the success from it. So he encouraged a generation of fighters to believe in themselves and do what they did. So, you know, everyone appreciates Ricky and sort of applauds him for his achievements and stuff like that. But I think in the long run, his reputation is going to grow and grow as someone who had such a massive impact on British boxing.
He had a few nice things to say to you after that fight, didn't he? Especially complimenting you on a heavy uppercut you gave him.
Yeah, I caught him with a belt he shot, and it was only about 15, 20 seconds in. But he said to me, he said, you know, he fucking buzzed me with that shot. He said, I know you ain't got much experience. He said, but, you know, stick at it and you'll do all right. And it was only a few little words, really, when you think about it. But when someone's just beat you up like he did to me, and you've got that. Before the fight, I was sort of thinking that won't happen to me, and then it happened really easy. He sort of walked right through me.
Yeah.
So you end up with a sort of newfound respect for someone, and then within sort of 20 minutes, he's praising you, giving you a bit of feedback and going, listen, stick at it, your jab was good and that uppercut, you buzzed me. So then you start thinking, well, if he's saying that to me, then he must have saw something. So I started to believe in myself a little bit more. The first fight I had after that, I went to Liverpool and boxed a lad who was unbeaten in 10 and stopped him in about 20 seconds with a body shot. So it was, you know what, actually, Lee Hogan, who works for VIP TV, took all my video cassettes not long ago, converted them all onto an hard drive, and I've got all my amateur fights. I've never had them for fucking 20 years. So that'll be on there somewhere. So I might pick that one out somewhere and put it on.
Yeah. No, I remember listening to one of your interviews. I think it was Tris Dixon, and you said that. He said it's around there somewhere. I'm going to find it.
Yeah. Well, I've got it now. Yeah.
You turned pro, and you turned pro with Steve Wood, and Steve was with you pretty much your whole entire career, wasn't he? Yeah. And you started training with Steve Foster and Ray Farrell in that gym, but I know Ray kind of moved away, and then Oliver kind of stepped in it as well at some point. Oliver Harrison.
Yeah.
So that's basically the gym you were in the whole entire time, isn't it?
Yeah, so I had my first 5 fights with Ray Farrell. Steve Wood owned the gym, and Steve Foster was helping us out in the gym there. They had a fallout, so Steve Wood and Ray Farrell had a fallout. Ray Farrell moved to Moss Side and wanted me to go with him, but Steve Wood didn't want me to go. So he said, Steve Foster will train you. And I wasn't really keen with the idea at the time. And he said, listen, just give it a couple of fights. And if you're not happy, I'll just give you your contract back and then you can go and do what you want. Mm. So I did. I tried it out. Oliver started helping us out in the gym with Steve. And then everything was fine for the next 8 fights. You know, I went 12 fights unbeaten and until I fought Scott Dixon. And Steve Foster was always busy with work and stuff. And it wasn't his full-time job training people. Oliver was doing a lot of pad work with me and stuff. But I sort of fell out of love with boxing after that. And I felt like I put a lot of effort in and I fell short against Scott Dixon. Really, I wasn't really addressing the reasons why I lost. I was just looking at the situation and the amount of effort I'd put in and the disappointment of what I'd got from really. So I felt like I'd put a lot of hard work in and not got the rewards what I deserved. But I didn't really look at the reasons why. And Oliver, so I went to Oliver. I had a fight lined up just to earn a bit of money. I went to Oliver and just asked him to do my corner. I was training myself. And I said, will you do my corner when I box? And he basically said to me, why don't you let me train you? I'll train you and I promise you I'll get you at least the European title. That's how much belief I've got in you. Mm-hmm. And I just couldn't see it at the time because my confidence was shot and all the effort and hard work what I'd put in had not got the result what I wanted. I just couldn't see the point in it all. Mm. He was the first person to start talking to me about tactics, about strengthening your weaknesses, about timing, making sure you do things at the right time. And it was an eye-opener for me. So I lost to Scott Dixon because once my first plan of beating him up and getting him out of there didn't work, I didn't have a backup plan. And I didn't know how to defend myself once he gritted his teeth and started fighting back. Just really didn't know what to do. And Oliver was the first person who started to make me work on that stuff. And he said, you need to find comfort in being uncomfortable. He said, the only time you'll win big fights is when you start feeling comfortable while you're in uncomfortable situations. And it's like the penny drops. He started working on my defence on the ropes. He said, listen, everyone's going to think now that if they get you on the ropes and start letting your hands go, you're going to fold. He said, everyone's going to do it. So what you're going to do is you're going to work on finding comfort in being on the ropes. And I did. He worked on it for 6 months solid. And it was the best thing what he ever did for me because when I won the third fight against Michael Jones, he had me in trouble on the ropes. Very similar situation to the Scott Dixon loss. And it was that experience really from the Dixon fight and the stuff what I'd worked on with Oliver what brought me through that and helped me win that fight. And definitely the defence on the ropes was what helped me win the Macklin fight. Mm. So it was sort of 6 years later, the Macklin fight from when we started to work on that stuff, or 5 years later. But never got the opportunity to put it into practice until I was under the cosh and I found comfort in being uncomfortable under horrendous pressure from Matthew Macklin.
Mm. And you kind of said that you couldn't really relax in your career until you actually lost to Scott because, like, obviously you had the shaved head, you had that kind of persona, you would build yourself up in the fights, but you said it was the first time you kind of relaxed after you lost them in fights. Then it kind of relaxed you.
Well, I think a lot of fighters have said this in the past. When you lose your unbeaten record, it takes that pressure off you. Mm-hmm. So I turned pro with no expectations because I'd not won a fight in my last 3 fights, even though I felt I'd won them. I was coming in off 3 losses, so nobody expected me to do anything, only the people around me. Steve Wood had seen me box my last fight in Tenerife and said, listen, you'd fucking do well in the pros, you should turn pro. And I said, I am turning pro already. I was going with Billy Graham at the time, and Prince Nazim Ahmed had set up a promotional company, and I was going with them. And Steve said, listen, come and see me when you get back, Salford lads and all this, give me the crack. I'll make you an offer, and if you like it, we can move forward with it. I'll make you a priority. He said, I really believe that you've got something and you'll do well as a pro. So he was the first person who believed in me, and he's a straight down the line fella, Steve Wood. Boxing's renowned for being, crooked business, and there's a lot of people you can't trust. And to a certain extent, it's true. But I'm always been an honest, straightforward person, probably too honest in a way. But I could tell Steve Wood was a straight guy. And, when I look back at my boxing career, did we make mistakes in the decisions we made along the way? Probably, yeah. But I wouldn't change it because I'm proud of the career I had. And, if you go back and change something, that means that it sends you down a different path. So I wouldn't want to go down a different path because I'm really content with where I'm at the moment. But Steve Wood, I had a good feeling about him, and he managed me from my first fight to my last fight. There's not many people you can say in boxing who have a career together. These generally you change trainers, you change managers, you change promoters. But Steve Wood was with me from the first fight to the last fight because I trusted him, and like I say, we made a few wrong decisions along the way, but I think it made him a better manager in the long run for other fighters, and we learned from the lessons.
Yeah, and you were kind of talking about loyalty there. It kind of like on the other end of the spectrum, like Frank Warren, you said like kind of binge off after the Scott Dixon fight, and then he was chasing you then for 2 years trying to get you back to sign. Yeah, it's the same thing because then you obviously beat Michael Jones the first time, you got your British title, and then he wanted to sign you back, and you were kind of like, out of principle, like, you were like...
There's a couple, you can look at it in a few different ways, can't you? I probably bit my nose off to spite my face in one sense, because without a doubt, Frank Warren was the biggest promoter in Britain at the time, and if anyone was going to get me a world title shot, easier than one of the other promoters, it would have been him. Mm-hmm. So he had what was his name now? He had a Puerto Rican kid, WBO. Daniel Santos was he called? Maybe. And then obviously you had Wayne Alexander around and Takalu, who was with him. So it would have made it easy to make bigger fights, but like I said, I'm a loyal sort of loyalty kind of person, and I couldn't understand because he sort of had a bit of belief in me, Frank Warren. He liked my style. He thought I was going to do something. He always thought the Scott Dixon fight was too early, and he was proven to be true. Mm. But if that was the case, if he believed in me and he felt like the fight was too early, we took a gamble, it didn't pay off. But really, he could have stuck by me, invested in bringing me back a couple of fights, little 6-rounders or whatever. I always sold tickets, so it wasn't like it was going to cost him money. And then shown a bit of belief in me, but he didn't. He dropped me. And I always remember thinking, I'm at my worst point in my life, really, at this point. I've got big expectations. I've given my job up. I was delivering beer before I turned pro, so I had no concrete sort of way of having an income. And I was sort of thinking, God, I just lost my first fight. I'm fucking down in the dumps, and you drop me at the worst point in my career. Yet I take a massive chance and come in at 5 days' notice for a fight. I win the British title, and then now everything's going well. You want me to come back to you? Fucking nah, I'm not doing that. No chance. And I was stubborn with it, and he persistently kept offering me fights with Takalu, Wayne Alexander. He'll get me a world title fight, but I just wasn't interested. And I'm glad, I'm glad that. I'm glad I didn't do it, because morally, that's what it meant more to me to do that. Then I would have felt like I was selling myself to get a world title fight morally, and I wasn't willing to do it.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me, like, I've read a couple of Sir Alex Ferguson's books, and he says, yes. He said, look, there's times when, like, morally, like, you know, your power in the dressing room is kind of threatened, and he had to get rid of people like Stam and stuff like that. And he says, did I lose titles because of it? He says, 100% I did. 100% I'll admit that. But he says, would I change it? No way, because you can't abandon your morals, your ethics. He said, that means much more to me than anything. He says, so from your aspect, like, yeah, maybe you might have got a world title shot of it, but morally you can always live with that, saying, you know,
I can sleep. Exactly. Exactly. I can sleep at night, and I've, you know, moving forward now, my career's finished 10 years ago, and I'm in the same line of work, but in a different role. But I still stick to those principles, and I've got a gym full of good fighters, but they're also good people. They're good human beings, and they're all cut from the same cloth. They're similar personalities, some quieter than others, some more outspoken, but I trust them all, and they trust me. And there's no better relationship for a fighter and a trainer to have than trust, because we're in the most dangerous sport, and their life is in my hands. So for them to have trust in me, I won't ask them to do something that I wasn't willing to do myself. I also won't jeopardise their health, because I know how dangerous and risky the game is. I've been involved in this sport for long enough to know the dangers. Mm. So it's the ingredients of a successful relationship, but and it's built on trust. And I don't think there's a lot of people who can say that in boxing. You know, certainly not from a management or a promoter's point of view. Because I took Steve Wood on as my manager with no real background to it, but I just had I got a good vibe off him, and it felt right. And you know, I think there's a lot to be said about your gut instincts.
Yeah. You won your first British and Commonwealth, obviously, against Michael Jones. And originally Michael wasn't supposed to be fighting you. Michael was, I forget who Michael was supposed to be fighting, but
Paul Samuels he was fighting.
Yeah, but you saying the whole time you were training and everything, and I think it's pretty funny. You knew he was going to pull out, didn't you?
Yeah, well, I was boxing on the undercard. It was either in a 6 or an 8 rounder. I think I'd had 3 fights since I lost to Scott Dixon. And I was boxing on the undercard. Just had a feeling, like I say, gut feeling. Just kept saying to Oliver, this Paul Samuels, man, he's pulled out a few fights recently. Just got a feeling he's going to pull out. If he does, and they ask me to step in, I'd have it, because the performance in my fight before that was terrible. I didn't do the weight right, and I got a bit of a slaying on Sky, and I'd gone to see a nutritionist, got my diet in order. Because I'd had criticism of Sky, it made me train fucking 10 times harder. It made me more disciplined with making the weight. So I'd done the weight really easy, and I was fitter than I'd been for probably ever. Mm-hmm. So even though I took the fight on 5 days' notice, physically and mentally, I was probably in the best shape I'd ever been in. So it was obviously not a great situation for Michael Jones, because he's gone from fighting a 6-foot orthodox to a 5'8", 5'9" southpaw on 5 days' notice. Whereas to me, I was fighting an upright orthodox boxer on the undercard in a 6-rounder. So the style hadn't changed for me. He was just the opponent. And also, even though it was 5 days' notice, I'd sort of had it in my mind for 2 weeks before it that if he did fall out, if he did pull out, then I'd step in. So it was written in the stars, I think.
And then obviously you beat him on decision. It was quite quite wide. Like you beat him quite comfortably, but it was no secret he weren't exactly friends after that. Some of the comments he made after the fight for a good year or so till he fought again, he made some comments, didn't he?
Yeah, he was just very bitter, and understandably, you know, he was had his heart set on winning the British title. He was Commonwealth champion. I took his unbeaten record, and you know, it wasn't like it was a lucky punch or you know. I outboxed him, so I beat him at his own game, and I did it comfortably. So, but he typical of like when you get these rivalries, he was just disrespectful, didn't give me any credit. You know, saying I wasn't fit to lace his boots, and if he has if he gets the opportunity to fight me again, he'd beat me hands down easily, blah blah blah. So there was a bit of needle going into the second fight, and then I got disqualified. So, God, you can imagine how annoyed I was, because I certainly don't feel like I should have been disqualified. And he stood there celebrating afterwards, after taking a knee and going down, and then he's got the British title around his waist. So I was just annoyed. So in a way, like I say, written in the stars, if I didn't get disqualified, the third fight wouldn't have happened. The third fight was the first time I was involved in Fight of the Year, and it sort of was the beginning of the rest of my career in terms of making me a reputation. So it was all meant to be.
After you've beaten the first time, you were quite busy with Matchroom. I think it was like you had like 3 fights in the space of like 3 months or something like that. It was Gary Logan, Andrew Facey, then Adam Kutuma. But you lost to Ozzy Duran you lost your Commonwealth title to Ozzy Duran, and you had a really bad hip injury going to that fight, didn't you?
Yeah. Me it went before the fight, and then I thought I'd be okay. Went in the first or second round, maybe, not sure. The ref came to the corner and was going to pull me out at the end of the second round. I asked him to give me another round, which, you know, if he'd have pulled me out, I'd have been disappointed, but it would have been the right call when I think about it, you know, in hindsight. But he can't move a big right hand. I went over and the ref stopped it. So, none of them things were stupid, but the fact of the matter was, I was getting paid 25 grand for the fight. I thought I'd be okay. I didn't feel like it was a risky fight, and I was getting married, so I needed the money to pay for my wedding. So I had to set the gamble. It didn't pay off, but it didn't feel like I'd lost because of the manner of what I lost and the injury. So when I went away, I got married, had my honeymoon, came back, and then started training for the third Michael Jones fight. But it wasn't like I was coming off a loss. It was just more like, well, that happened. It was unfortunate, but I'm still British champion, and I was looking forward to that fight then. Yeah,
because I suppose, like, silver lining for everything, it was just the Commonwealth on the line, so you still had the British, and obviously Michael Jones then, after about 2 years, I think it was a year and a half, became mandatory for your British title, and you still came back again. But obviously you won it back, and like his quotes were, everyone knows if I have a full camp, he's not fit to lace my boots. Sure, not us against the Southpaw. He says won't happen again. But then what happened? You went kind of through a bad spell because you didn't fight for almost 10 months for the third fight, and you'd obviously just got married. You'd a child on the way, as far as I remember, and your granny died the day before your weigh-in and stuff. But Barry Hearn kind of came in and saved the day because he kind of pushed for the rematch, didn't he?
Yeah, well, I was sort of getting a reputation as being that sort of exciting fighter, but I hadn't been involved in any, properly exciting fights. So it was more like an entertaining fighter, really, a pressure fighter, a good body puncher. And when I got disqualified against Jones, we got made an offer from Art Palulu in America to go and box over there. It was good. So I was scheduled to fight in Boston against Teddy Reed. And during, I think I'd only been in training for a couple of weeks for the fight. And then that was when I got the phone call about Michael Jones, they'd made me the mandatory then for his British title, which he'd got by disqualification, which didn't really make sense at the time, because how do you get disqualified from a fight and then, without boxing in between, get made the mandatory? So I obviously felt like the Boxing Board of Control had realised they'd made a bit of a mistake by looking back at it. You know, Dave Parris really should have given Michael Jones 5 minutes to recover. He openly admitted in the ring he'd not seen the headshot, which was the one what Michael Jones said he was hurt from. He was shouting "stop boxing" because he felt that it was a low blow. How can you disqualify someone for a shot that you don't see? And then second of all, why can't you give someone 5 minutes to recover as per the rules? So they obviously realised that they'd messed up a little bit. So they was rectifying their mistake, really, even though I'd got disqualified. So it didn't really make sense. But I wanted that opportunity to fight him again, because I knew that stylistically he was made for me. He was always a tall, upright boxer, was always right on my street, especially one who couldn't really punch that to get your respect, because I've always had a nice little rhythm with me. I always cover the distance quick. I always punch well to the body. So that style was always made for me. And I always wanted to box in America, to be fair. So it was a tough decision, really, because I was thinking, well, what do we do? What made me make the decision really was the Lonsdale belt, because the question was, do I win the Lonsdale belt if I win the fight? Because it's not a defence. And the answer should have been no. But they said yeah. So they really went out of the way, the Boxing Board of Control, to right the wrong, because technically I shouldn't have won the Lonsdale belt that night as per the rules.
Yeah.
But I actually did. And as it happens, it wouldn't have mattered anyway, because I ended up making a couple of more British title defences, just marking time, because there was no real opportunities to go. So actually, in terms of the rules, I have actually won the Lonsdale belt outright now. It doesn't matter. But if I'd have given it up then and walked away, I'd have won a Lonsdale belt and technically not done it under the proper terms.
That third fight you had with him, November 2004, obviously, like I said, like your lead up into it, your grandmother dying the day before your weigh in, and you were saying that you kind of had a breakdown in the change rooms beforehand. Oliver Harrison had to take you into the shower, didn't he? And it was Ricky Hatton that kind of brought you back around, wasn't it? Yeah,
it was just I could hear the crowd outside chanting, and I just started. It never happened to me before, because I was always real good with dealing with pressure, because my way of dealing with pressure was just to forget about the situation I was in. But I started to get a bit overwhelmed with it all, and I was like, I can't fucking do this. So you can imagine the uproar that I'd have caused fucking 45 minutes before I'm due to top the bill on Sky. All of a sudden, one of the competitors who's walked out of the fucking building wouldn't have gone down well with Sky. So Oliver was sort of trying to calm me down, and he walked me off into the shower area and sat me down, and then all of a sudden Ricky just walked in, and he was fresh off beating Costa Zoo, so he was like he turned into this worldwide superstar. But to us, he was just fucking Ricky, and he come in, had the crack, said, "I hope you're not fucking shitting yourself." And he didn't know anything had gone on. He didn't know anything about my nana or anything like that. So, which was a good thing, because instead of him being sort of sympathetic and anything like that, he didn't know what was going on. So he was just sort of having the crack. And it just switched my mindset, made me forget about the fight and stuff like that. It was just nice and relaxed. And he just went, he made me forget about my nana and just made me sort of more switch on about the fight. And it's just, listen, you got this kid's number. You should prove that in the first fight. Just relax and do what you do, and you'll win no problem. And it just flipped a switch like that, and then I was back on it. And I'm glad, really, because if I'd have walked away, I think I'd have been walking away from boxing. because Sky probably would have had nothing to do with me again. I was coming off 2 losses, and my career would have been fucked basically. So, good old Ricky Hatton saves the day again.
Well, that actually reminds me of when Tyson Fury was fighting John McDermott. I think it was the second time, but there was an argument over gloves, and John just said, "Right, I'm not fighting." You know, he got his bags, he walked out, he says, "Fights off. I'm not fighting," because there was an argument over the gloves and stuff. And one of the Sky representatives spoke to him in the car park and said, "Listen," he said, "if you pull out this fight, this whole card falls apart. Basically, we can't air the headline." And he says, "We're going to sue you for all the costs." So he was like, "Fuck's sake!" So you went back in, then, and you had to fight him with the gloves, you know.
Right.
Yeah, but that fight, you were beating him pretty much the first 2 rounds, and then the third one, obviously, he knocked you down twice, and then you got back up, and you hurt him at the end of the third round. Then, when it looked like you were out, what was going through your mind then? And obviously, you said you trained for that with Oliver, didn't you?
Yeah, obviously, like I said earlier on about my defence, that sort of moving my head in that default defence what I decided to ingrain into me, that saved me. And the experience of losing to Scott Dixon, and then the stuff what we'd worked on about finding that comfort in being uncomfortable, all played out in that fight. And I think those 2 things, finding the comfort, losing to Scott Dixon, and then added to that, me losing my nana a couple of days before, which gave me the extra motivation then to sort of, because I remember getting up after the second knockdown and standing there, and I sort of took a big deep breath, and I was looking across the ring at him. I remember looking at him thinking, "There's fucking no way you're beating me today." Mm-hmm. And when he come in, I knew I wasn't as hurt the second time when I got knocked down as the first time. He sort of clipped me on the back of the head, and my bum slipped through the ropes when I went down the second time. But the first time I was really buzzed up. But I think he thought I was more hurt than I was, and he really piled it on, and I could feel the steam coming out of him as he was punching. And I just remember thinking, "Oh, as soon as you're slowing down now, you're fucking getting one." And I had him out on his feet by the end of the round. So that really won me the fight, I think, because psychologically then he'd gone from being absolutely on top to walking back to his corner, nearly out on his feet himself. So I think it killed him off in that sense. And I think the desire to win once I was in there. So obviously I had that wobbly moment in the changing rooms, but then the desire that gave me to win that fight after that, once I was in that situation, probably pulled me through it.
Yeah, it's crazy because you see the difference in mentality. Like the first 2 rounds, it was almost as if you took off or you left off, or your style was a nightmare for him, and you could see it was kind of overwhelming him. And when he hit you with that uppercut, it more than anything, it wasn't even just joining his face, but when you went down, it was almost like the way he said it was like relief from him. He was like, like this fella isn't going to be following me around the ring anymore. But then a couple of rounds later, you knocked him down twice, but it was just at the end of the round. Obviously, he beat the bell, but you could see in his face, he almost kind of turned. And I can't remember what he said to his corner, but it was like I was watching last night. He said like he kind of shook his head and kind of was saying like I don't want to continue, but his corner kind of. So you could see
at the end of
what
happened was at the end of the 5th round. And he was fucking probably, it's my fault probably. When I dropped him twice at the end of the round. And when he sort of looked at his corner, and I think he shook his head like that. And when he looked at me, I sort of gestured to him to get up. Basically, because all I'd done in the build-up to that fight was call him a coward. I'd said, "Listen, he's a shithouse. He quit in that last fight. I don't care what anyone says. He knew I was getting to him, and he took the easy way out." So I'd called him a coward. And then when he's on the floor, I sort of gestured to him to get up.
Yeah.
So if it had not gestured to him or left him, I think he would have sat it out.
Yeah.
Whereas as soon as I told him to get up, I bet he thought, "You cheeky bastard," and then got up. So And then as it happens, the next round came. I got him in the corner, and he went down again, and then he shook his head again, and then didn't get up, because he knew, at the end of the day, I'd implemented the tactics what Oliver had said. We'd had that wobble in the third round, but they basically worked to a T. And like I said, I always knew my style was a nightmare for him. He was beaten by a style which was a nightmare for him, basically.
Yeah.
So it was the right call, because he was on a hiding to nothing in the end. And I was relieved as anyone, to be honest, that it was over, because I'd obviously had that shaky moment in the third, and the pressure of coming off 2 losses, of just having my son born, and of all my family grieving around me, my nana dying, and having to cope with all that. The weight off my shoulders when the ref waved it off was immense.
And then after the fight, you had a few defences, and it was kind of at the stage where you'd kind of won it outright and the Lonsdale belt, and you're kind of looking to move up and move on. But then Matthew Macklin was kind of on the way up. Then him also a former Irish champion, but he was kind of on the way up, and he was becoming mandatory for it. And you kind of pushed for it, wasn't it? It was a conversation Brian Peters had with Steve Wood that made you want to fight, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, because when I think about it now, the more sensible side of me now, the older I'm getting, the less testosterone's in your body, so the less aggressive you are. And when you're a fighter, every single question someone fires at you, you answer as if they're fucking trying to have a pop at you. It's crazy sometimes. And so basically Brian Peters had rang Steve Wood to ask him what the situation was, because they was mandatory. Was we going to give it up because we'd made a couple of defences and we had it outright? We didn't need to win it. Was I going to fulfil it? Because they didn't want Macklin career stalling. So Steve said, right, listen, I'll ring Jamie and speak to him and see what he says. And it might have been just the way he said it to me or whatever, but he just basically said, Brian Peters has been on the phone and wants to know what we're doing with the British title, because he said he don't want Macklin's career holding back. And if you're not going to give it up, then you're going to have to fight him. So my reaction to that was, are you fucking winding me up? Why does he think I won't fight him? So he went, no, he didn't mean it like that. He's just saying, like, if you don't give it up, then they're going to enforce the mandatory and you're going to have to fight him. I said, well, I'll fucking fight him then. They don't tell me what to do with my career. Mm-hmm. No, listen, don't be stupid. Let's think about it sensibly. It's a tough fight, that, and you don't really need that at this stage. You're within your rights to move on. You've got the Lonsdale belt. There's no point in taking that risk. And I went, listen, fuck that. We're fighting him. I'm not having him going around telling people that I've given the Lonsdale belt up so I don't have to fight Macklin. I'm going to fight him. And he was like, you fucking mad, you? And I went, yeah, well, fuck it, I'm fighting him. So it was a bit of an ego thing, really. And again, I'm glad that I did, because it turned out to be, it's this signature fight in my career, and what people are still talking about it 14 years later. So it was probably a stupid move. It wasn't the most sensible move career-wise for me, or you'd have thought it wasn't, but really it made my career. So it did work out.
You kind of felt like your style was suited to him as well. And there was a good story. There was a good story about because you kind of knew his kind of rhythm of punching from, because he was working with Billy Graham at the time. And what was the conversation you and Oliver had about your tactics going into the fight?
Well, Oliver was a master tactician, so he used to be able to pick out holes in people's styles and stuff, and generally could get you a way to exploit it. And one of the first times we stood sort of having a conversation about, because what I really liked about Oliver as well was he was always open to your interpretation of things, and he liked to have your input. So, which I think it's important, and I sort of use that as well in my style of when I train my fighters, because if a fighter's not comfortable with doing something, then you're probably never going to get them to execute whatever you're asking them to do in the best way. You know, they have to be comfortable, or if it doesn't really come natural to them, you're better off finding a way of what they're more comfortable doing, because they're more likely to be able to do it then. So, but I always remember him saying to me, so how do you think we go about this tactically? So I said, well, what do you think, box him? Because he's a big, strong bastard. And he went, what do you mean box him? So I said, well, get on the back foot and box him like we did with Delroy Melly. So I boxed a bit of a journeyman a couple of fights before I fought for the British title. He was a big, strong, could punch. Probably the hardest puncher I ever got hit off. And we just out and out boxed him off the back foot. And no one had ever seen me box on the back foot. I didn't think I could do it. Sky never shown it either, because they ran out of time or whatever. So up to that day, unless you was in the arena, no one really knew I could box on the back foot. I just preferred not to. Preferred the pressure fight sort of style. So I said, I think we box him on the back foot. And he said, his words were, if you try that, you'll get run over. So I went, right, well, surely he's fucking too big and strong to stand and have a fight with him. And he went, yep. So I went, right, so how the fuck do we beat him then? And he said, you got to sit right in front of him and make him miss. He had me watching videos of James Toney, actually. He said, what videos of James Toney? He said, he'll hold his feet and stand right in front of you and make you miss. He said, and he'll get his shots off from positions where he thinks that you're too close, you can't get them off. He said, we need little short uppercuts. He said, you've got to make him miss. He said, but most importantly, once he steps off with that rhythm, he said, so we'd sit down and watch videos of him. And he said, watch his rhythm. And he'd come in and he'd let his shots go, boom, 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 boom. And then he'd step off and breathe. Only for 3 or 4 seconds. And then he'd be back down your throat. And he said, see those little gaps in between? As soon as he steps off, you've got to go. So I said, fucking hell, that's going to be a mad fight. He went, yep. He went, but for the tools we've got with you, that's the way you beat him. He said, if you try and fight him, you'll come second best. He's too big and he's too strong. If you try and run on the back foot, you'll gash yourself and he'll run you over. So I was like, right, all right, fucking hell, you're the boss. And Terry Dooley, actually, one of the boxing writers, he was one of the only reporters we allowed in the gym. And one day, we was drilling the rhythm of so we'd sort of step, take a little half step back, drop, so head drop to the left, and then roll under the left hook. So if you watch the fight back, it worked perfectly. So a little half step. So as Matt comes, he'll sort of come with a phase with his feet, and he'll throw a right hand down the middle. Everyone always throws right hand left hook with a southpaw. So he'd throw the right hand, so I'd slip it and then roll under the left hook. And it worked perfectly. It worked so many times, but also early on, listen from the corner. And as soon as Matt stops punching, you can hear Oliver banging on the ringside apron going, now, on him. And I'm sort of taking a beat death, going, fucking just going at him. Even though I didn't want to, because I was that tired, that was the only way we could beat him.
Yeah. I suppose as well, because Matthew, the way he was being built in his career and all that in his fights, he kind of had his own way in terms of he was setting the pace and having his breaks, but you were kind of making him work when he didn't want to work, when he was trying to have his breaks. And he kind of said, I think he said it was like the end of the 6th round or something like that, or 7th round. He was sitting in the corner. He said he never felt exhaustion like it in his life. He said it felt like this cloud had just gone over his eyes and he couldn't even hear what people were saying to him in the corner. Yeah. And I suppose it worked anyway.
It worked only just, and that's the thing, because I was always used to being the stronger fighter, so that wouldn't have worked. And if I'd have been left to do the tactics myself, I probably would have got beat boxing on the back foot. So it's
Oliver's the only one I can sort of give credit to for coming up with that game plan. So that was telling you before, Terry Dooley sat in the gym and watched us going through that routine of that slip, roll, step. And he said to me afterwards, he came in the changing room and he spoke to me and he said, I sat in that gym with you 4 weeks ago and watched you going through that routine with Oliver in the ring. He said, and I remember sitting there watching you going, what the fuck are they doing? He said, this isn't a way to train for a fight. And obviously he wasn't there all the time, so he didn't understand. But he said, when I seen it playing out in the ring and you kept slipping his right hand and rolling under the left hook and then pulling. So that was the main one was the pull, because he'd always go boom, boom, boom. So it wasn't a 3-punch combination, it was a 2-1. And he said to sit there and watch it play out was fucking unbelievable. It's like, and listen, he spoke, the words used too much, but Oliver Addison was a genius when he used the way he used to come up with tactics and think outside the box and not your generic tactics of how you do things. It was just unbelievable.
Yeah.